live. Let's see. Oops, going live. All right, I think we are live. What's going on, everyone? We're gonna do another weekly live stream today where I answer your questions. As always, I'm trying to get all the questions from this Google Doc where everyone submits their questions and I can answer them in the order I receive them. So if you want to get your questions answered, do submit your questions ideally to the form, which is linked in the description below. Otherwise, feel free to post your questions in the live chat and I will get to them when I do. So let's see. I'm gonna just jump right into the questions and my apologies, I'm like kind of still setting up here because I got a little delayed. But yeah, feel free to leave questions if you had them in the live chat. And I'm just gonna start pulling questions from my emails and messages otherwise. So let's see. I have a question here. The first one is actually a fairly recent one from Valentine's Day about pharmacy informatics, I believe. So let me go ahead and read this question. This is from Jackie. Jackie says, "Hi, Brian. I want to self-introduce myself. My name is Jackie, and I'm currently a retail pharmacist who has been out of school for about 1.5 years now. I'm currently enrolled in a master's program in health informatics and will be graduating this upcoming summer time." Oh, that's exciting. That's pretty exciting. It's like a 2-year program. "I've watched your videos along with your companion pharmacists, Kevin and Paul." It's pretty awesome. Shout out to Kevin and Paul. "You guys brought up some good points about the paths that the pharmacy is geared towards. I'm hoping to get some guidance or some sense of direction since I want to get into informatics but want to avoid residency if all possible. I finally paid off my student loans." Wow, congratulations on that. "Which was one of the key factors that dissuaded me from pursuing a residency from the very beginning." It's definitely a big cost factor there. "Any advice or suggestion is greatly appreciated. Thanks." So I think there's many ways to approach that question. I think, one, there are many different paths to informatics. There's no right or wrong answer per se. And I think that, two, since you mentioned it, finances and residency, that you don't need a residency to pursue informatics. Granted, informatics is very broad. I would say if you're interested in pursuing hospital positions, like a pharmacy informatics position in a hospital, you will likely be more competitive if you had a PGY2 in pharmacy informatics. Now, again, informatics is super broad, so if you want to get an informatics job, like in certain other areas, a PGY2 in pharmacy informatics or residency in general might not be necessary because they don't value it as high as, let's say, a position in the hospital. So I think the main point there is that a residency isn't needed, but in certain scenarios can make you more competitive. It seems like you're about to graduate the master's in health informatics. And I think maybe that might be a good starting point to finding what positions may be out there. Because as a student, actually a recent graduate myself, I graduated from my master's program last May. The recruitment efforts and resources available to you is extremely high. And I think many recruiters reach out proactively and are more likely or inclined to talk to you because you're a student or a recent grad. So I think I would start there. Because it's a health informatics program, reach out to your guidance counselors or your networks within the program to see what type of positions are available. I think that's a great place to start. The second thing is informatics, in my opinion, is a lot of hands-on work and experience. Anything you can do to get hands-on experience is another great way to get into informatics. It's not necessarily about the credentials you have. I would say it's about the experience and the work you've done. There's a couple ways you can do that. I think the easiest is just getting involved in some organization, be it local or national. I usually pitch ASHP SOPIT SAGs because you work with national groups or with a group of folks nationally on different projects to tackle. And they range all over the place. Sometimes you're like revising the PGY2 informatics competencies. What did we work on? You're working on white papers. I don't remember what were some of the projects that we worked on. I can't remember all the different projects, but if you go to the website, you can see some of the projects they've worked on. A lot of great things have come out from it. And the other thing is, more indirectly related, is the networking aspect. You meet a lot of renowned individuals who are in this space. So I think getting that hands-on experience and getting involved in those committees is another great way. Otherwise, you got a master's, that's already super awesome. So start off with those two things, maybe even apply to some jobs, talk to some of your connections, and see where that takes you. All right, let's see if we have another question here. Everyone's so shy in the live stream. If you're in the live stream, make sure you give the video a like, because I don't see any likes on the video right now. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the live chat, and I'll get to them when I get to them. Let's move on to another question. Let's see. This one is from YouTube. I think this is related to Epic. Let me see. Yes. So this one is a pretty straightforward question. It's about the Epic certification exams, and this is from KKB. KKB says, is the exam open note and open system? Yes, the exams are open note. You can have, and I usually have, all of the PDFs, the training companions open, so I can quickly control find through the thousands of pages that's part of the exam. So being resourceful and super good at Control F to search for things is good. Additionally, to the second part of your question, open system, yes, you can actually have hyperspace open, text sessions open, and you can check your reasoning or logic in the system when they ask you questions. I actually did that a lot. They're like, which one of these is the correct build configuration? I might log into the system, go to those screens, and actually test it right there to get the answer. But sometimes those take a little longer, so I usually save them for the end. Okay. Let's see. What's another question that we have? This one is from Rohit, and it is about pharmacy. So Rohit says, I am a student from India. I have finished my B Pharm looking for good colleges in USA or UK, but there are no scholarship for full funding for my tuition fee. Can you please help me find out? Any college that gives a scholarship for GPAs 7.0 in US or UK. I didn't even know GPAs go up that high. That's really high. Should I continue? So one, I have no idea which schools do that. I think you can probably find that information by searching the schools. Should I continue my career in pharmacy because there are decrease in jobs? So it says you're from India. I'm not sure about the career market in India. But if you're talking about the US, I made a video about like the return on investment for pursuing pharmacy. I think right now I would probably say no if it's in the US. But you're in India. I don't know what the job market is like in India. If it's like the US, the answer is probably no. Basically, I love technology, so I want to know if there's any field related to pharmacy and technology. There is a field. I think the broad name for that is pharmacy informatics. It's very broad though. So there's many different areas in pharmacy informatics you can enter. And I always encourage people who are interested to explore specifically what area in pharmacy informatics that you're interested in, because your areas of interest will dictate certain pathways. Not that it's a specific pathway, but there's just different paths you might go depending on where you might be interested in. Okay. I think that is that question. So we have a question in the live chat from Halil. Leo says, "Hey Brian, I have watched your videos pertaining to residency and felt the same way as you did when I don't have a backup plan and putting all my eggs into residency basket." I think that's very common for a lot of folks. Do you think it's smart to apply to any jobs right now? And I'm going through the interview phase as well. That's a very good question. I can tell you when I was applying for residency, both for my PGY1 and PGY2, I was so overwhelmed with the interviews that I didn't even have that on my mind. I think there are pros and cons. The first thing on my mind is that if you're going for residency, you want to put on your A game, right? The B plan is your A plan being securing a residency. So I think that applying to jobs at the same time could impact how well you do on residency. Like I was not sleeping the months of January and February because I was so focused on residency interviews. I was flying all over the place, preparing for presentations and studying. So I think there's that. Converse to that, I absolutely agree about putting your eggs into the basket, because I don't know if you've seen my video where I talked about where I didn't match my PGY1 residency, and I 100% wish I had applied to jobs, just applied in general, because I found it extremely, extremely hard for anyone to even respond back to me when I applied after not matching. So that was like late March, April, around that time. I think if it's not a lot of work, maybe, but I would also say like applying directly to jobs out of thin air, like you have no connections, no network, and you're just submitting applications, might be a waste of time, because it's hard to get screened and get an interview in that spot. I feel as though a lot of job applications, when you're applying, you want to have like a connection or like some referral to get you in. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to secure a job. So I think it kind of depends. Like, how many interviews do you have? Do you have a lot of interviews right now? If you have a lot, then maybe I would focus more on the interviews. If you have jobs that you're interested in and know people there, that might be worthwhile to pursue, just as kind of a backup to talk to people. But otherwise, I think it kind of depends. Maybe some more details about how many more programs you have, how many more interviews you have coming up, and then maybe we can go from there. Yeah, it's good to focus on interviews. Go ham on them. It's February. This is interview season. I think I was like flying from program to program every weekend, and even on weekdays during February. So focus on that. Put your A game in, and best of luck. I'm sure you will do awesome. Let's see. All right, let's go to another question. Let's see, what's the next question from? CP hymns route. It's a little hard focusing on these questions. Okay, so let's see. This is a I'm not sure which question to answer. Let me scoot back and circle back to this and give a quick plug to something that one of my colleagues is doing. Beiju, let me share this with the group here. Can I share my screen? Portion of the screen. And I just heard of this right before the live stream, so I don't have as many details. Hopefully you guys can see that. I don't know if you can see the screen, but this is a post from Beju. If you can't see it, sorry. I'm just going to read it here. Beju is promoting something that is for a good cause and just want to share with everyone. Sounds like someone shared with Beju about his peer, Casey, who experienced, she's a final year pharmacy student, and she is currently receiving treatment. So just sharing the GoFundMe link. Looks like Katie was involved in numerous clubs and activities on campus and is a pillar to our school community. Casey always been generous spirit. During her undergraduate studies, she was heavily involved with volunteering and donating for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Even currently, as the world needs assistance with COVID-19 vaccinations, Casey is there lending a helping hand by vaccinating the community. So just sharing, I'll post a link to the GoFundMe in the chat description. Hope to share it. Hope you guys share it, at least take a look at it if you get a chance. And post that on there. There you go. So the GoFundMe link is in the chat description. Mike Stir Fry. I like your name, Mike. Actually, I also like stir fry. So, Mike Stir Fry says, "Hey Brian, I was wondering about Farmco genomics again. What are your thoughts? You mentioned there is a lot of opportunity. Can you elaborate?" Okay, now you're persistent. I know. I remember that question being asked last time. Yeah. So what are my thoughts? There's a lot of thoughts here, and I'll say a couple things. The first thing is that when I was interested in informatics, pharmacogenomics was like very hot because pharmacogenomics, I'm sure you understand, is very complex, and if you can take that knowledge and do a lot of it in the background, a lot of the legwork, help interpret genotypes, and translate it to phenotypes and actually make it do something. Like if there's a drug interaction and they need this genetic test, you can look at those things in the background and prompt things to providers to order certain tests to prevent pharmacogenomic related issues. It was very hot back then because informatics can do a lot. So very hot field back when I was pursuing informatics. So this was like, when was this? 2014, 2015? And I think it's no surprise that it came around the time when the Affordable Care Act came out, which was like 2009, 2010. And Obama put a lot of efforts and funding towards genomics, precision medicine, as they would call it, right? So a lot of funding went towards that. So since then, the funding has made pharmacogenomics arguably more accessible, and implementation into EHRs or in the medical community, I would say, has increased. So maybe to be direct with your question here, in terms of opportunity, there is a lot of legislation that has come out from incentive programs related to precision medicine and pharmacogenomics. You can read that up. I don't remember the names of it. Maybe it's still precision medicine. I believe All of Us. Let me check that out. I believe All of Us is one of those programs that's very, very large right now. Let's see. Yeah, I believe that's one of them. So All of Us, and I'm just gonna read from Wikipedia. The All of Us research program, previously known as the Precision Medicine Initiative Cohort Program. So they did a lot of renaming since all of those incentive programs came out back in 2009, 2010. So the All of Us research program, previously known as the Precision Medicine Initiative Cohort Program, is a research program created in 2015 during the tenure of Barack Obama, with $130 million in funding that aims to make advances in tailoring medical care to the U.S. The mission is to accelerate health and medical breakthroughs, enabling individualized prevention, treatment, and care from all of us. You can read more about it. I know that there's a lot of initiatives and efforts towards it. During my short stint, so I was at the HHS for 1 year, I know that there was a lot of just people interested in working on projects towards that. So if you're interested in working there, there's funding available. What the opportunities look like, I think is all up in the air. I can't really give you any concrete projects that they're working on. But I'm sure if you Google different things related to all of us, you can see that. I don't know if that really answers the kind of question you're talking about. There's like a whole nother area where a lot of pharmacists are starting their own types of pharmacogenomic practices and trying to establish business models. So that's like a whole nother area that I'm probably not as familiar with. And then maybe if you're not familiar, but I would think you are, is checking out CPIC. CPIC is the Clinical Pharmacogenetics Implementation Consortium. Reach out to some of those folks there, very knowledgeable in the area, and I would think that they may have a better answer than I do in terms of opportunity. But in general, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think that that's going to be a big part of our future. And I think in terms of implementing pharmacogenomics in the electronic health record, there's an immense amount of opportunity. I don't think we've hardly capitalized on getting that implemented. So lots of room for growth. So if you're interested, that is super awesome. Okay, we have a couple more minutes left. I'm trying to keep these to 30 minutes live stream. So if you guys have more questions, leave them in the live chat. Otherwise, I'm going to hunt for another question. And I was not as prepared this time as I should have been. So let me see. What other question do I have on here that I can pull? Let's see. What question should I respond to? I don't know of any on the spot right now. But, well, I was probably less prepared to get all the questions pulled up this time. I will maybe share one thing that I really wanted to take a look at. And for those of you who are not familiar, because I've only done one video, I'm trying to actually create a weekly series where I talk about all the things I think are important and I find interesting in the intersection of pharmacy, informatics, public health, and policy. Things change so rapidly, and I think information is knowledge, knowledge is power, and this all will make you a successful individual. So I've been trying to do this weekly series. I've only done it once, and I fell off the boat for the last few weeks. But I saw something today that really captured my eye, and it's definitely one of the things I'll share later, but since it's recent, I'll share it right now. Let me see. Let me pull this up. I know there's another question that came up, but I'll get to that in just a second. Let me pull this up. I think this is kind of important for those in the audience. Let me see here. Is this one of them? Yes, here's one of them. So one of the sources that I really enjoy reading, and this is something I'm going to talk about in a future video, if you're like me and like many other pharmacists, especially if you're in a hybrid role or a specialty role, it's very difficult to keep up with, continuing medical education or just pharmacy topics, new drugs, new technology, new information. Two sources that I use a lot is the ASHP Daily Briefing, which if you remember, they send it to you every day and they curate the most important pharmacy news from all different areas. There's like research, there's just like general politics, there's new drugs, there's new policies, all these different things surrounding pharmacy. So they curate the top, perhaps, hospital health system news. So that's one. So general pharmacy practice, I have been using that since 2013. Very great source of quickly making sure you're on top of things. The other one, which I use more often now, is it's like the ASHP Daily Briefing, but it's from AMIA. AMIA is the American Medical Informatics Association, and they talk about policy, pharmacy, or not necessarily pharmacy, policy and informatics. And I absolutely love it. A lot of the things they talk about really pertain to informatics, healthcare, and public policy. So it's like right up my alley. Let me see, what happened to that article? Oh, here it is. there is an article. Let me share this real quick and I'll get to the live chat. Let me just share my screen. Here we go. So let's see. This is very interesting. I have not read this yet. I haven't even looked at the abstract, but the title caught my eye. And anyone who's interested in pharmacy informatics, I would highly encourage you to scope this out. Dr. Gettinger, I worked with him in the ONC when I was at HHS, and Teresa as well, briefly. But knowing who they are, having written this, I would say this is an absolute must read. High Tech to the 21st Century Cures Act, Clinician Burden, and Evolving Health IT Policy. The High Tech Act is arguably one of the most transformative pieces of legislation that has passed since 2009. That's the reason why we have electronic health records in the US, in my opinion. It just expedited that. 21st Century Cures Act, you can almost think of as the new modern High Tech Act. And it has, in my opinion, the most transformational health IT policy that will impact all of us in healthcare, not just pharmacy, but in healthcare for the next decade, at least. So if you're interested in this field, this is one of those articles I would highly encourage you to read. And I know I'm going to read this when I find some time, but highly encourage you to check this out. I wanted to share this though. So let me do that and then jump back to the live stream and then maybe answer one or two more questions. And then we're going to end it because I need to do some work. Where's the live chat? Here it is. Okay. Going back to the live chat. Let's see. We have a question from Gabe. Gabe says, "Hey Brian, I signed on as a immunizer pharmacist for CVS. Good on you, man. And was offered to stay on as a staff floater pharmacist. Just wondering if I will get stuck in the retail world forever." That's an interesting question. I think, and this is, I think that if you don't want to be stuck, you can not be stuck. You just need to, do what you need to do, your typical things, network, build skill sets, apply for jobs elsewhere if that's not what you want to do. Maybe retail is what you want to do. I mean, it's a job at the end of the day, but I don't think you're necessarily going to get stuck. But if you get comfortable and you let some of your skills and knowledge slip a little bit, then it could be a little bit more difficult to jump to another job setting that you want. But I wouldn't say you would get stuck. I think everyone has the ability and capability to go to any position anywhere as long as you put in the work. So it's kind of like, I don't know if I really answered your question, but Gabe says, "I enjoy clinical side of pharmacy more, but should I be more careful in staying in retail for too long on my opportunities later?" That's could be a little difficult question to answer. I think being in any one field, and this is my own personal opinion, is that people get comfortable easily. And when you get comfortable, you just want to stay in your spot and you don't care about learning anything else. And I'll give you an example using my field right now. Being in informatics, if I kept doing the same thing, and I was doing very similar things for a couple years, I lost a lot of my general pharmacy knowledge. So I think if you don't keep up with things, and I think over time, my motivation to keep up with certain things, like let's say hypertension guidelines, becomes more difficult. So if you stay in retail for a long time, you will inevitably lose knowledge in certain areas that you're not using. With that said, just because you're in retail doesn't mean you can't climb the career ladder or do something different in retail. Retail is vast, it's diverse. You can do different things in retail. I've seen so many of my retail pharmacy colleagues that jumped to MTM, jumped to ambulatory clinics, did different things in the field. Now, I have not worked in the retail setting myself, so take this with whatever you will. But I think that in any company, especially large retail ones or large hospital ones, whatever, your ability to move around is there. You just have to not get comfortable and find ways to build skill sets toward whatever position you're going. Always think where you want to be a couple years in advance and work towards that. But if you get comfortable, I think it's very easy to get stuck in your position because you lose knowledge very easily if you don't use it. K. Moshbacher? Hope I didn't butcher your name. Any thoughts on smaller community residency versus level 1 trauma center in Chicago residency? Seems very specific there. I think I got that question last time. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, how would you define a smaller community residency? But I answered a similar question last time on this. So I did my PGY1 at a large community hospital. We were about 850 beds at the time, fairly large. So it was a community hospital. And I also did my PGY2 at I believe they were level 1 trauma. I don't remember. I think they were. But a academic medical center at Utah. And I think it was nice to have both perspectives. On one hand, community hospital offers you like a couple of things here. Let me try to gather my thoughts. The first thing I noticed going from a community to academic medical center is that it's innate in the name. There's not as much teaching as you would expect in a community hospital versus academic. You're literally always being grilled on questions, all the experiences, presentations, rotation. There's just so much teaching. And it was fascinating. Everyone was just keeping up with the most recent literature. Not that my community counterparts weren't, but it was just the talk was very common in keeping up with everything. And it was just always a teaching environment. So everyone's always expected to be a learner, and there's always new things to be learned. And it was a very unique experience in that sense. The other thing is, I would say what I missed about community and why I appreciate community experience is that when you're in a community hospital, you have usually less resources. You usually have, so less resources, and you're almost expected to do more work in some ways. Like, for example, managing heparin on a patient. I literally was doing the calculations. I was talking with the nurses. I was making sure all the rates, like the instructions were there. They got the drug. I was literally managing everything from beginning to end on that patient. When I went to an academic medical center, it seemed almost too easy. Someone was ordered a heparin drip. You just make sure all the settings were right, all the initial doses and boluses were good. And there was another specialized team that managed it. Like, I didn't really get to do as much. And I found that very surprising. And I think the big picture is that in community hospitals, you really get a good picture of hands-on experience of doing certain things. And I think every time I go to an academic medical center, I've been to 2 now, I lose a little bit of that. Granted, it's traded for, academic literature. Like you it's a different type of experience, but I know that you lost a lot more of that hands-on experience, which I did appreciate from community hospitals. What are some other things that were big takeaways from community hospitals? I think in general, it's also like prestige. I don't know if you care about that at all, but academic medical centers usually are more associated with prestige, and community hospitals are less. I actually don't think that really matters. I think regardless of the program you enter, I think it's how much work you put into the program. You can go to a very terrible program, put in a lot of effort, and turn out to be an amazing resident. At the same time, you can go to a great program, put in very little work, and come out as a terrible resident. And I think residency, especially for pharmacy residency, I think the program should be less of a factor, and how much effort you put in is the bigger factor. But if you can choose, I'm biased. I lean towards academic medical centers because I like the teaching aspect. But if you could, having experience from both community and academic it was really good. I appreciate diversity and diverse experiences, so I would have done both. So many questions. Let's try to get out. Amy, I'll see if I'll answer the rest of these. Amy says, love that thought. Thank you for these informative live chats. You're very welcome. I try to answer questions as much as I can because I honestly can't get to some of my messages. So I'm glad that you guys can join me in these live streams, which if you guys don't know, I'm doing these every Wednesday for 30 minutes between 8:30 and 9. Gabe says, Brian, you are the man. Thank you for your insights. Keep doing what you do. Thanks for that. Appreciate the encouraging words, Gabe. K Moshbacher gives me a heart. It was Valentine's Day recently, so I heart you as well. So let me take this last question, and I probably should wrap up here. Elizabeth says, Brian, could you share your thoughts on the current job market during this COVID season? Do you think this is a positive outlook for new grads or just a temporary thing? Ooh, that is a very difficult question. Current job market. This could be a little controversial. I think off the top of my head, I don't know if you've seen the question about, do you suggest new grads go straight to hospital or retail to gain experience? So that's like a two-part question. So the first part about just general job market in the COVID season. So I think based on the video I did on the pharmacy job market, I would say that the job market is not great for pharmacy right now, especially if you're in the retail setting. What we know from the BLS studies and just some of the more articles that are coming out, it would imply that retail jobs are going down. Things like mail order pharmacies, e.g. Amazon, and pharmacy technicians getting more responsibility, technology and automation would imply that retail is decreasing. So that's one. In light of COVID, you can see that there are so many job postings for people who are hiring, people to immunize, right? That's very much needed. Now, I think it would almost be rational to think that that's going to end at some point. And I would think that they're probably not going to be permanent positions down the road. Unless something changes, like some of these mass retail chains, they change and shift towards another area where they can put pharmacists to do something beyond vaccinations. Because I think a lot of the workload is going to go to mail order and automation. So unless they can figure something out or be part of that, I think it's going to be very difficult for those to remain permanent positions. So that's one. I think it's temporary. And is it a positive outlook? I would say positive outlook, yes. Because in general, I was having a very negative outlook on the for the job market for pharmacists. But the fact that these jobs have opened up, yes, because otherwise some people wouldn't even have jobs at all. So I think it's positive in that sense. The pandemic looks like it's going to be happening for at least another couple months. So at least there's some more jobs to go around. So overall positive. Now, the question about should new grads go straight into hospital or retail, I think that's very a heh with a smiley emoji. New grads going to hospital or retail to gain experience. I think, so this is new grads specifically. I think that's a very hard question to answer, and I think the answer lies within you. Where you want to go should dictate which one you choose, in my opinion. Because some of my colleagues love retail. They love being there at the community, so accessible to the patients and their community that probably makes sense for them. So in that case, I would say new grads should go into retail to get that experience. Now, some people hate hospital. I know a lot of my colleagues right now who work in hospital and really don't like it. There's a lot of cons to working in hospital settings. And one I can think of that I personally related with was working certain weekends and having to cover holidays. You know, for the first like 2-3 years of my working experience in residency, I didn't get to see my family during holidays. I didn't really get to go home much. And having to pick up weekend coverages and sometimes like double shifts during the weekdays, I was working 12 to 14 days straight, and it was very hard. Not to say that retail doesn't have those hours. I don't think it's as common though in retail settings. If anything, retail settings sometimes have better hours. They do like 10 to 12 hours a shift, and they do like maybe 7 on, 7 off. But I know if you talk to some of your hospital pharmacists, many of them complain that they have to work weekends and holidays, and usually whether or not you get those days off is dependent on seniority. So if you're a new grad, you're probably going to be working those shifts for at least a couple of years until like someone retires or something like that. But kind of like sidetracked, in general, where you want to go should be dictated by where you're interested in. And if this question would have been different if you were asking about just pharmacy school. I think any practice experience, be it retail or hospital, to cement what you're learning in school is good. Like a lot of my students that I talk to, I'm like, it doesn't even matter if you go retail or hospital when you're in school, just get some hands-on experience to learn it. Ideally, you actually get both, and hopefully rotations will expose you to both. But I know I probably didn't really answer your question directly, but yeah, do both if you can. Anyways, all right, guys, thank you guys for joining. If you didn't hit the like button on the video, make sure you give the video a like. If you have questions for next week, I usually try to answer them in the order I receive them. It's still all over the place. I get too many messages on different social media platforms, so I'm trying to like pool all of them to one place. There is a link to a form at the bottom of this video in the description. Submit your questions there. And again, I do these weekly on Wednesdays. And yep, I'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining, guys. Bye.